Students, welcome to KCSE English. In this episode, we are going to look at KCSE Paper 2. KCSE Paper 2 is the longest paper in the English set of papers. Remember, English has three major papers: Paper 1, Paper 2, and Paper 3. We have previously looked at Paper 1. I invite you to go back and revise the Paper 1 episodes that we have looked at. Today, we are going to do an introduction of Paper 2. Paper 2 carries 80 marks of the English paper. Paper 2 is examining your skills to appreciate literature, to understand comprehension, and to practice your English grammar skills. In this paper, you have the comprehension that takes 20 marks, and then we have the literary appreciation, which carries 25 marks. This is an extract or an excerpt from the set text. And then we will examine you on an oral narrative or a poem that carries 20 marks. And finally, we have the grammar section that carries 15 marks. With this, you need to understand how to prepare for this paper and keenly study which sections you are going to be examined on and how you are expected to answer the questions. Let's look at comprehension. In the comprehension section of this paper, you will be given a comprehension and you will be asked deep questions from this comprehension. You are expected to read the text, then you are expected to synthesize all the information from the comprehension. Questions that you will be asked are either critical questions or questions that you need to apply knowledge, not only from that comprehension, but your general knowledge of what you understand with the issue that is being discussed. These are very deep questions and they require you to think critically, think wide, look at what the comprehension is talking about. Again, remember that you really need to read newspapers so that you get to understand what kind of issues are in the comprehension paper. Most of these issues are the emerging issues that we are finding in our society, for example, technology, science, peer pressure, parenting, so many themes that are examined in the comprehension aspect. I would urge you to go out of your way, read a lot, read widely, look at the questions that you are being asked. These questions can even entail questions such as the stylistic devices, what is the mood of the passage, what is the tone of the passage, what is the attitude of the speaker in the passage or the writer in the passage. So you need to really read widely, you need to prepare adequately. Get yourself some time to look at various comprehension questions and learn what is required of a student. The second section you are going to be examined on is the literary appreciation. The first part of this section is that you will be given an excerpt or an extract from the set text. Remember the compulsory set text. This is either Adol's House or Blossoms of the Savannah. These questions will be asking you on your understanding of that set text. You will be given a section from the text and asked context questions, and you will be asked questions about characterization, thematic concerns, and the stylistic devices there. You need to prepare and read your set texts very well. Remember, this section carries 25 marks. This is just a direct entry to getting the 25 marks because you already have read the text. You know what is required of you. The second section of this literary appreciation, you are going to be given a poem or an oral narrative. This comes alternatingly depending on the years. So prepare adequately. For the oral narrative, you will be asked aspects such as what are the character traits, what is the type of narrative, what are the themes there, what is the moral lesson. And you will be expected to answer those questions correctly. Get yourself to read widely about oral literature. This involves reading about characterization in oral literature, mastering and knowing about the types of oral narratives and their characteristics. And how do we give our character traits to our characters? How do we identify the setting? How do we identify the moral lesson of a narrative? You also might get a poem in this paper. Remember, you really need to learn how to appreciate poetry, because poetry is one of the best and most interesting aspects in English. Poetry carries 20 marks. In this section of this paper, you will be asked questions such as, who is the persona of the poem? What is the mood of the poem? What is the attitude of the speaker or the persona? What is the atmosphere of the poem? What is the tone of the poem? What are the thematic issues being addressed in the poem? And so you need to also appreciate poetry. It's not just about reading poetry, but reading poetry keenly, deeply, to understand what the persona is talking about, or what message does the poet intend to pass through, because we will be asking you about the subject matter of a poem. And so it is important to understand that as you read the poem that you are given, try as much as possible to understand line by line, stanza by stanza, so that when you answer these questions, you will have the confidence because you have prepared adequately. Remember again, these 3 sections, you will get questions that will be asking you the meaning of words, certain words that have been highlighted in the passages, the meanings. Remember that you pick out the meaning depending on the context of that passage, of that extract, or even the narrative or the poem. And lastly, you will be examined on grammar. In grammar, we are examining your mastery of the parts of speech. Remember, the parts of speech are very important. And so we will ask you questions that expect you to form nouns, to derive verbs, to derive adjectives. We will be asking questions on adjectives such as order of adjectives, questions on adverbs. We will also be asking you questions on conjunctions and some questions on interjections. Remember, the sentence structure is very important. So you also need to master how to do sentence rewrites. Very, very important. And so students, those are the 4 sections that you will be examined on in English Paper 2. This is a very wide paper, and students mostly tend to perform poorly on this paper. I would urge you students to prepare adequately. Read and understand. Read and synthesize. Read and evaluate each question, each section that you are being examined on. Again, very important. Attitude is the most important thing in Paper 2. Some of you students have a negative attitude towards Paper 2 because it is the longest, it has many sections that are being examined. But remember, this is the paper that you can easily score very good marks. And lastly, before we go, in this paper, punctuation is very important. You miss out on punctuation, you miss out on capitalizing letters, you miss out on full stops and question marks where necessary. We are going to deduct a number of marks from your paper. So again, prepare, learn to punctuate your work clearly. Work together with your teachers to ensure that you are ready for this paper. Thank you for listening today. We are going to look at this paper, each section deeply as we move on. I would like to invite you to like our page and subscribe to this page for more informative KCSE exam preparation tips. On behalf of my producer, Professor Igara Kabaji, and my crew, Neka and Fambi, thank you so much for joining us. See you again.